afternoon. We meet up again. I'm Dr. Wong Teck Wee. Today, we have a very special guest, and the topic is very interesting. So I want to introduce my friend, Miss Callie Tai. She graduated with a Bachelor of Business Studies, major in accountancy in New Zealand. She's also a co-founder and director of Just Life Group Sdn Bhd, a retailer of organic and biodynamic food products since the year 2002. She's an importer and a distributor of organic and biodynamic food products. And before she ventured into organic food business in year 2001, Callie has 10 years of experience in auditing and accounting in Singapore. In pursuing her skill and knowledge, she feels that she has to increase her skill in other fields. So she has completed 2-year anthroposophic home care training with an experienced anthroposophic nurse, Mr. Rolf Hein from Germany. And she's now doing the advanced anthroposophic home care training under the guidance of the same teacher. Maybe she can explain to us later what it means by anthroposophic. And she's a firm believer of homemade foods and an avid home fermentation practitioner for the last 10 years. And Callie is passionate about sharing traditional fermented and cultured foods to preserve the tradition and for the well-being of community. So she's an expert in fermentation. And a lot of times we are very worried that whatever that we ferment, it could be poisonous because of some fungal infestation. In year 2020, Callie has also co-founded Rasa Masa Enterprise to impart skill, knowledge, and experience to inspire home-based fermented foods, healthy home cooking, and support small artisan businesses. And in 2022, Callie has also co-founded the Kongsi Co-op, a consumers cooperative with a vision to connect the people, soil, and nature to co-create a harmonious ecosystem. So with that introduction, I want to invite Ms. Callie to talk about fermentation. It's a practical homemade fermentation for the Malaysian microbiome. So with that, Ms. Callie Tai, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dr. Wong, for a warm introduction. Yeah, it is indeed my passion to share home fermentation, especially home fermentation. Yeah, because I believe that everybody can be a fermenter. Yeah, so it's not something that you need a lot of microbiology kind of thing to be a good fermenter. Okay, like how our nenek moyang used to be or still are. So I would say, we can actually embark on this route together. Yeah. So I will share my screen, and then I will share some stories, about fermentation. Okay, so today's topic is about practical homemade fermentation for Malaysian microbiome. Yeah, Dr. Wong helped me with this title, which I think is very appropriate, because it is true that our microbiome is unique to us, and unique to us, not just individual, but of course in our food culture as well. So today's fermentation, I will share some practical things that you can do at home. Yeah, so it's not only about why fermentation, and why is it that this fermentation is becoming like a new food trend. Yeah, in fact, fermentation has been with us for a long time, the longest time. I think archaeologists studies discovered that fermentation has been around for at least 10,000 years. So but it's becoming more. I think there's more consciousness about this. The quality of fermented food. So therefore, I think probably more and more of you would have heard about people starting to ferment things like make our own yogurt, make our own sourdough bread, even like kombucha. Yeah. a lot of different kind of fermented food. Yeah. So I mean, it's the fermentation, right? I mean, Dr. Wong introduced me that I have started fermentation for over 10 years ago. And I came across fermentation mainly because, you know, in my business as organic retailer, so when times that the farmers has a lot of produce, right? So I had this thought about, you know, how do I preserve the food for a bit longer? Because fresh produce, yeah, if it's sitting on the shelf, probably after 3 days, you know, it started to look tired. Then I thought of you know, something like kimchi, because I like kimchi, right? So to me, at that time, when I started fermentation, it was mainly two things, yeah, food preservation and also taste. Yeah. So I started with what I like. Yeah. So it is, to me, is that, you know, there is a lot of things in fermentation. Yeah, the best gift of fermentation is really the taste of time, because making fermented foods takes time. And also, I realized that it actually gives me time to slow down. Yeah, because then I will take time to observe the living things in the fermentation and also enjoy the process along the way. Yeah. So, like, you know, some of the things that we can do, simple things that we can do, I will share later. Some of the practical fermentation, homemade fermentation that we can do. Yeah. So, what is this little enterprise that I formed with a few friends? It's called Rasamasa. Rasamasa simply means the taste of time, right? So I really like this name because it's when I was thinking about what is this, what I have, what is my intention for this little enterprise that I just started, really is about reviving the culture of food fermentation. Yeah. So, and also innovating with traditional fermented food. So what I do with my team is that, you know, we try to not just eating like sauerkraut on its own, or eating tempeh on its own, but what can you do with tempeh as well, other than stir fry, pan fry, yeah, or deep fry. Yeah. So what other things that you can do with tempeh, for example? Yeah. So these are the things that we embark on. And also, like what I do now, to share with our community, like you know, a new friends like you online today, you know, what this friendly microbes, all these friendly microbes, right? What can they do to our food? Yeah, in terms of taste, in terms of nutrients, and how it affects our health, and also how it helps our planet. Yeah, so this is what I'm interested in. And then you know, so I went on to learn from a lot of teachers. Some are people who are, you know, just home fermenters, and some are like very professional fermenters. I even went to some countries. I want to learn Japanese fermentation, so I went to Japan to learn from the miso teachers, you know, Japanese fermentation, and went to Indonesia to learn the tempeh. So I somehow have this idea that, you know, if I want to know fermentation better, I think I need to understand their culture, you know, why they stumble upon this kind of fermented food and how they use it in their country, in their food culture. So I enjoy doing that. So every country that I visit, I would find out, you know, Google, where are they? Are there any fermenters that I can meet up, you know, and exchange ideas? Yeah. So like I learned brine fermentation from a French. Yeah, and so it's quite interesting how they interpret and how they you know, how they enjoy the fermented food. Yeah. So fermentation, right? So in terms of fermentation, I think, you know, the recent history that somebody that we know, right? Captain James Cook. Okay. Captain James Cook, if you read about fermentation, right, his name often pops up and then linked to sauerkraut. Yeah, I'm not sure whether you heard about this story. Again, for me, I also heard it. Yeah, I heard it and I Googled it and I saw this on the internet, which I thought is quite interesting, something that could be true. Yeah. So because, you know, for sailors, right, they actually, especially in those days, yeah, they are on the voyages, could be like for a long time. And, you know, during those days, right, a big problem was scurvy. Yeah. So because lack of vitamin C, as we know today, yeah, that, you know, because there's no fresh source of fruits and vegetables, yeah, therefore lack of vitamin C. And when they are on the sea, they could experience, yeah, this illness. So one of the guy that experimented, yeah, with how can he overcome this problems of fresh fruits and vegetables, right? So he thought about sauerkraut, yeah, the German sauerkraut, yeah, and then somehow he managed to get his people, yeah, to like to start to take sauerkraut. And you know, so the scurvy issues on his voyages, right, actually improves a lot. Yeah. So that is how this sauerkraut earned its name that, yeah, is a good source of vitamin C. But basically, even though it's fermented, yeah, the vitamin C is still alive, you know, it's still there in your sauerkraut. And in fact, studies also shows that the vitamin C, the bioavailability of vitamin C actually increased by many folds, yeah, after fermentation. Yeah. And who is you know, who is the person that inspired me? This is the guy that I stumbled upon his book. Interestingly, from my one of my classes, yeah, in biodynamic farming. Yeah, I went to this training, and one of the speaker during that module, he was talking about a farming method, yeah, about a French intensive farming, natural farming method, yeah, that you know, for 1 acre of land, and then you can feed, you know, the whole household and that kind of thing. And then, but this young teacher, he came with a lot of resources, not just his knowledge, yeah. He also came with a stack of books about, of course, about farming, about different kind of books about plants and all that. But one book that caught my attention is this book that is, you know, green color book. It's called Wild Fermentation. Yeah, I saw that, and so immediately I went to bookstore and bought a copy of this book. And this book has become my Bible for fermentation. And I really like the term wild fermentation. Yeah. So this guy, his name is called Sando Katz. He's actually a public educator and also an author of many books about fermentation. Some of them I show it here. And in fact, he is actually, what caught my attention also is because he was or he is a AIDS survivor. And it's because of his illness, because of his health issue, he came across healthy eating and also fermentation. So, and when he started experimenting, and then he realized that, you know, the power of this fermented food, and he started his public speaking and public sharing. So everywhere he goes, right, he will bring his sauerkraut, bring his, you know, all this brine fermented veggie, and then he will do sharing, yeah, anywhere, anytime, yeah, because he just wants to, you know, share his excitement about fermentation. Yeah, so he actually he stressed a lot on this one. He said that you really don't need to master biology or study microorganisms to practice fermentation. Although because of his journey, he actually became quite an expert in microorganisms and microbiology. Yeah. So fermentation history is really long, right? So also we really can't find a single example of culinary tradition anywhere that does not incorporate fermentation, right? So it is everywhere. Yeah. So in a way, right, you know, he actually says that in a way, you know, like we are actually kind of like a superstructure of bacteria. So a lot of studies also show that we are actually like 90% bacteria, or we are bacteria. Yeah. So there are a lot of bacteria organisms working inside us and on our surface as well, right? So it's unfortunate that now we are taught the danger of disease and bacteria cause disease. And in fact, we are becoming, we have developed this fear of fermentation, especially from home fermentation. Yeah. So we will share a little bit more about, you know, what is fermentation really. Yeah. This is yeah, I did a compilation of some of this food culture around the world, fermentation food culture. Yeah, so you can see that fermentation is indeed in every culture, and these are some of the cultures that closer to us. And you can see that some of the key fermented food, we have actually incorporated them into our daily diet as well. So like sourdough, right? So it's I think it's becoming very common. 10 years ago, you know, it's very hard to find like sourdough bread, but now especially where we are from, around Klang Valley, there are lots and lots of sourdough bakery. Yeah, right. So this is you know, actually literally mostly from Germany, and I mean in the Western countries. Other than that, of course, they got cheese and etc., right? And then Japan, you know, miso, something that we are very familiar with. Natto, miso. In Korea, of course, kimchi, that's my favorite. So you have their jang. Jang is like they got gochujang, you know, all sorts of jang. Yeah, that is like a sauce or a paste that they use in other cooking as well. And then in China, our famous soy sauce, yeah, which we have in a lot of our culinary, yeah, in various food culture. And in India, of course, there are a lot of fermentation as well, like they are chutney. And then something that we are familiar with is like dosai, idli, yeah, lassi. Yeah, those are all fermented. And in Thailand, I'm not sure whether you have seen this particular thing, that the picture that I've shown here is like a stack of slices of fermented soybean. Actually, is dried. And now they also make it into organic ones. It's very nice. So normally what they do is that I was taught, you just put a piece of it in your soup, whatever soup that you are doing, or in your porridge. In your cooking, you can bake, what do you call that, roast it a little bit, and then you can cut into small pieces and then eat it with your food. Yeah, it's called tua now, I think, if I remember, if I pronounce it correctly. Yeah. And also the famous eco enzyme and food enzyme by Dr. Rosokun, it's also from Thailand. Yeah. Indonesia, the hero of fermentation is their tempeh, which is also my favorite fermented food. Yeah, other than kimchi. And then in Malaysia, we have tapai, right? It's very famous. And of course, we have our belacan and our tempoyak as well. So these are just some examples of what, you know, what is out there. And there are 4 types of fermentation that I know. I'm not a scientist, as you have heard about my introduction. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, you know, with any medical background. But I have compiled all this information that to me, I thought it would be useful. Yeah, has been useful for myself. And, you know, and I hope it's useful for you as well. This different types of fermentation, generally from my experience, right, there are 4 types of broad category of fermentation. Yeah, lactic acid fermentation is also called lacto fermentation. This is very easy. to me, very easy to practice at home. It's an anaerobic process. Yeah. So basically, sugars or starches, carbo, are broken down to produce the lactic acid. So the lactic acid, that's what gives you the sour taste. Yeah. So like in your yogurt, your sauerkraut, kimchi, or any brine fermented stuff like your cucumber or green chili. Yeah. So our green chili that we eat with wonton min, it's actually used to be fermented. But now what you can get out there, right? They are actually pickled using sugar and vinegar. So even though it's sour, but it's not from lactic acid, but you can easily make your own. Yeah, if you know about this basic concept, you can actually make your own. Ethanol or alcohol fermentation. So this is like our beer and of course our sourdough as well. Yeah, it's actually a wild yeast. Sourdough is like a wild yeast. Yeah, and then acetic acid. Acetic acid is also actually a good thing. This one is the oxidation process. So it converts the grains or fruits, right? The sugar from them into the vinegar. Yeah. So apple cider vinegar or any like brown rice vinegar. So these are some example. And then more fermentation. This is our favorite fermented bean curd. Yeah, the one that we like to eat with porridge and also tempeh. Yeah, so this is some of the still traditional type of fermentation that we have today. So Sandoka says that fermentation, right? So a lot of people actually worry about, what is fermentation? Yeah. So what are the risks, yeah, and things like this. So I like his explanation best. Yeah, there are a lot of explanation about what is fermentation. Yeah. So he says that fermentation is intentional or desirable microbial transformation. Yeah. So basically is that, the food, right? If we leave it outside, bacteria will grow on it, right? And then if we leave it out there for long enough, it rots, right? Become smelly or become moldy, because the bacteria, the fungal, and all this harmful, so-called harmful elements will come and attack it. Why? Why so? Because things needs to break down. Yeah. So all this, what we classify as harmful organism, actually to me, they are also beneficial because things needs to rot, right? Things needs to be composted, yeah, and go back to nature. Yeah. So if we don't want that to happen, and we want to keep the piece of vegetables for a longer period of time, yeah, then we need to control the transformation. So this is what we mean by intentional or desirable microbial transformation. So we give it a suitable environment and then we transform it. Yeah. So this is why I think, the idea that all bacteria are bad and then that, will cause health issues and it has to be eradicated. Yeah. So this is the kind of things that probably driven us to what we call a war on bacteria. Yeah. So how do we balance this, right? Because some rotting bacteria, the bacteria that cause this rotting, are necessary when food go to back to nature. But when we want to preserve food, then we can create a nice environment so that this food can be transformed, into something more desirable, right? And the primary objective of fermentation is really to guide the microbial development. So why do we ferment? We spoke a little bit about that, and then just a quick summary of my understanding, of my experience. Why do I ferment? The first thing is to preserve the food effectively and safely. This is actually the best way to preserve our food. It's not a pickle or a cured. Yeah, it's different. Like you cured the food, you you use a lot of salt, yeah, and that one is basically we make it into like mummified it, huh? So it becomes like totally immortal. Yeah, but fermented food will still spoil in a way, or become less desirable in terms of taste and texture. But it is still to me is a very effective way and very safe way to preserve our food. Yeah. So it's like, you don't need any additives. Yeah, all you need is the right environment for the food to be preserved. And of course, it makes the food more delicious and digestible. And when we say delicious, I would say that also it gives you another flavor to the food, right? So your cabbage is no longer just cabbage. It can become sauerkraut. And the sauerkraut can also be used into other things as well. Like you can make salad dressing with it. You can add into your nasi ulam. You can add into your lo sang, Chinese New Year is coming. So it adds a different flavor in your food as well. And of course, because it's already kind of broken down, right, by this bacteria, so it becomes more digestible. This one, you just need to experiment it yourself. Yeah, it's not difficult to confirm this fact. Yeah, because our body tells. And then makes the nutrients more bioavailable. Yeah, this is one study about purple cabbage. Purple cabbage, the vitamin C, right? Before fermentation, 1 cup of red cabbage or purple cabbage gives you about 30 grams of vitamin C, 30 microgram of this vitamin C. But after fermentation, yeah, and it's tested, is the vitamin C level is 23 times higher. Yeah, so this is actually very I would say it's very encouraging, right? So by doing fermentation at home and eating it, right, so we are also getting this benefit. Yeah, and it can also this is actually a practice that is passed down from many generations. In some I think South America, I think countries, right, they make this is a African food called curry. It's actually a cassava root, the starch from cassava root. And they noticed that, if they eat it raw, actually there is some toxin in there that is not suitable for human consumption. But when they ferment it, it became it actually became safe for human consumption. Yeah. There is this practice in South America as well, that they chew this cassava root in the mouth. They chewed it and then they spit it out and then they ferment it into alcohol. Right? So basically they're just using the saliva as a starter. Interesting, huh? The enzyme in our saliva. Yeah, not sure whether that is something that you would want to try. Yeah. And then most importantly, we are actually feeding ourselves this life culture, right? Yeah, and this life culture can actually help to restore and diversify our gut's microbiome. Yeah, because of all this antibacterial practices that we do. Actually the diversity of microbiome in our guts actually is quite affected. Yeah, we see it a lot in young children, like the parents that who are like, super bacteria paranoid kind. Yeah, so maintaining this healthy balance of bacteria, right, can be done, right? Or I would say that there is this possibility, yeah, by eating plant-based foods, high fiber food, and also the fermented foods. These are good foundation for, to me, I think it's a good foundation and not so difficult to practice. kind of good measures, right? Yeah, so I guess you know, it's not something so I will just go through this quickly because I think in our audience, right, these are probably something that you are more familiar than myself. But I think these are also something that has helped me, yeah, to look at this fermentation as a way to you know, to balance our health. Yeah, so these are some of the possible signs that I mean, I notice it myself as well. Yeah, actually I had a very severe this microbiome imbalance when I was in my mid-20s. Yeah, highly stressed work, and also not having a good balanced diet, right, has caused a very long chronic um what do you call that, uh, inflammation, yeah, in myself, you know, and also candida as a result of developed as a result of eating too much of antibiotics. Yeah. Okay, so the first one is these are the sign, the visible sign. Yeah, so a gassy tummy kind of thing, and constipation, right? Because when we have this gas developed in us, obviously, you know, food is so-called fermenting, yeah, but it's like, you know, it's probably more like rotting because the good bacteria are not there. So you only have this imbalance of this bacteria that helps with rotting in us. So, and the byproduct of it is obviously this gas. And then we also would have sugar craving, yeah, and weight problems, yeah, because the sugar will feed the harmful bacteria and also the candida, yeah. Indigestion, flatulence, bad breath, body odor, candida I have mentioned, and also allergies, asthma, yeah, autistic spectrum disorder, okay, some skin problems, yeah, and these are the autoimmune as well, and weight problems, we talk about it, and then the mental health issues, yeah, so like anxiety, depression, yeah, all these things are actually you know, I think it makes sense to me, yeah. It makes sense to me when I read it, right? These are the things that make sense to me, yeah, from my own experience and also from my interaction with my customers and you know, people around me. It makes sense to me, yeah, from my observation of their lifestyle and to their changes in their lifestyle and also their diet, right? How it has helped them, yeah. So I have this lady has chronic constipation for over 20 years, since her early 20s until in her 40s. And because she came and learned tempeh with us, and because they come and you know, she came with a sister and they are learning it you know, for to build a small business, yeah. So you know, so the duration of training is quite long, and every time they come, right, they will be like tempeh smoothie, tempeh everything, tempeh every day as well. And one day she mentioned that, you know, she suddenly, she said her constipation problems is gone. Yeah. So she did not change much in other things, but by only the only thing that changed in her life, right, is that now she's taking like sauerkraut, tempeh, you know, every day. And you know, it has helped her since then. So these are some of the small observations that we saw in our friends, yeah. And of course, guts health affects us in terms of our mental health balance as well. Some of the causes that from my own observation as well is too much antibiotics or drugs. Okay, that's me. I took antibiotics for a year, over a year. Yeah. And until one doctor told me that I have to stop this antibiotics. Otherwise, you know, my whole body, the balance would be difficult to recover. Yeah. So then that's when I of course, obviously, right, when when you are given no choice, that's when you start to, you know, look at other possibilities. And pesticides and fertilizers in our food has affected this microbial balance as well. And also this is because pesticides and fertilizers affects the soil microbiome, yeah, and the soil microbiome are the ones that affects our produce, yeah, the veggies and the fruits that we eat. Pollution, radiation, excessive intake of animal products. Okay, so this is not new. Genetically modified foods, chronic stress like me, and then babies that are not breastfed and also born through cesarean, because the first encounter of this friendly bacteria, right, is actually through the birth canal of the mothers, and the next one is obviously through breastfeeding. And so for the babies, right, many times when they come to our shop, right, and then they have this skin allergies, very, very often that you know, when we ask them, you know, how's your baby born, a lot of time, right, yeah, most of the time, right, the answer would be through cesarean. Yeah, so that is also something that is not yeah, not difficult to observe. Yeah. And additives, especially sugar. Yeah, sugar is in a lot of our processed food right now. Okay, gut-brain axis. So this is something that is not new as well, but I find that it's very appropriate. Yeah, yeah, for my case especially, because when I'm stressed, then I don't eat well, right? So my gut's health is very badly affected, and then because my guts is not healthy, and then I became stressed, you know. So it goes in this vicious cycle. Yeah. And you will notice that the microbiome is really, really like the you know, the thing that is most important, yeah, that we need to really look into. Okay, how we feel is regulated by our gut's microorganism, right? In short, okay. So like serotonin is also what we call happy hormone. It actually affects our sleep, appetite, yeah, and also of course our happiness. So home fermentation, is it safe? Because it's an intentional and controlled microbial transformation, so it is it is safe, in short. Yeah. So the calm yeast up there, right, is not dangerous as well, right? The calm yeast is there to protect our fermented food. So just scrape it off. Okay, why we want to do home fermentation? Yeah. So if you look at the manufactured food, right, just turn over and look at the ingredients, you will see that there are a lot of things that is not food. Yeah, namely. Yeah, so that's why we do home fermentation. Yeah, so like this one as well is a kind of fermented vegetable, so-called fermented vegetables, but really is more like a pickle. Okay, so what do we need for home fermentation? All you need is these 5 things. Yeah, salt, the air, whether it's anaerobic or aerobic, so you just have to figure this out. Salt has to be natural and non-iodized, and then good temperature and organic and biodynamic ingredients, obviously, right? So it's something that is good for our environment. It's also good for our guts environment. Yeah. So, and also at the same time, we are, you know, helping to preserve the soil as well. And sometimes you need starter, especially for tempeh and koji, like Japanese kind of like miso, this kind of thing. We do need some starter, but most of the time they are well fermented. Yeah. And of course you need some vessel, right? So the first type of fermentation is lactic acid fermentation. You notice that most of the lactic acid fermentation are fruits and vegetables. Yeah. And milk as well. Yeah. For yogurt. So lacto fermentation of vegetables, you only need 3 ingredients. Very, very simple. Yeah. You only need salt, probiotic friendly bacteria, and you need an anaerobic environment. Okay, for salt, always use natural salt as much as possible without iodine. Okay, unfortunately, most of our salt are with iodine added. So if you want to find good fermentation salt, right, you need to look for them in organic shop or some supermarket and look for the one with a tag say naturally occurring iodine. So that means it's like sea salt. There is a natural occurring iodine in it. Those are okay, not the synthetic one. Okay. And salt actually helps to prevent inhibit the spoilage bacteria. That is the one that causes rotting. And at the same time, the lactic acid bacteria actually is very, very salt tolerant. Yeah. So how do we know how much salt to use? Okay. We use 2% salt for harder kind of vegetables like your sauerkraut and all this kind of vegetables. And then 5% salt for soft kind of vegetable, because when it's soft, you don't want it to ferment too fast. A bit higher salt content actually helps to slow down the fermentation. Yeah. And these are some of the traditional fermentation vessel that you can get. I think nowadays not difficult to get. This is actually quite nice because you saw that you can see that there's this drain around it. That is the one that keeps the oxygen in, but at the same time, the carbon dioxide, which is water soluble, can actually comes out through the drain with water. Yeah, the drain is actually with water added. But of course, these are widely available at home, right? So we can reuse our bottles. This is what I normally recommend. Yeah, so sauerkraut, very, very easy. This is the simplest fermentation for anyone who wants a good fermented food, but easy to make kind of thing. Yeah. Sauerkraut is, very simple way of fermenting your excess vegetables. Yeah. And brine, lacto fermentation is also very easy. This is my favorite pastime. When I have anything, I see that any farmers have any excesses, right? So it goes into the brine and that keeps the veggie for a lot longer. Yeah. So normally when we ferment, right, how long does it take to ferment? So for sauerkraut, it takes about 3 weeks. For brine fermentation, it takes about 5 to 10 days, depending on the climate. And you can keep it longer if you like it, the flavor a bit deeper, with a bit deeper sour taste. Yeah, so use our senses. And the purpose of this bowl, right? I'm just showing you this one, yeah, is to hold the brine. Okay, so no science in it, just to hold the liquid in case it overflows. Okay. And yeah, cloudiness is when you know that the lactic bacteria is building up. So by adding salt, basically the salt is helping to prevent the harmful bacteria from growing for the first few days. And from the 3rd day onwards, right, you can see that, yeah, the fermentation, you can see the bubble start to come out. So this is the sign of fermentation. Okay, so fermentation is also called cold cooking. Yeah, the bubble is like boiling. Okay, so this is many ways that you can enjoy. Yeah, you can blend your fermented vegetables and make it into salad dressing with olive oil, some other herbs and spices. And you can obviously eat it raw. That's the best. And another thing that also all these things you can Google online, right? How to make it. Rejuvenate. Rejuvenate is actually a very, very good drinks, beverage that you can make using wheat berries. Yeah, you can also use others, but wheat berries is quite common. And also fruit enzyme. Yeah, plenty of information online as well. How to make your own fruit enzyme using raw honey, mixed fruits, and ferment for 6 months and longer. Yeah, so these are other type of fermentation that I want to share with you. So like sourdough and wild yeast fermentation. So these are some examples. And mold fermentation mostly requires starter. So like natto, soy sauce, and all this, yeah. But my favorite is still tempeh, because tempeh is easy to make and the starter is not hard to find. Yeah, fermentation of soybean, right? So it's basically to break down the anti-nutrients. Yeah, so we know that, you notice that our ancestors, right, they don't normally eat soybeans as it, like they don't drink soy milk. Yeah, soy milk is a new thing. Yeah, they only eat everything fermented, yeah, from soybean, right? So yeah, observing that, right, we know that there must be some wisdom in it. Yeah, because too much of soybeans, right, the oxalate from it can actually bind to calcium in the kidneys, yeah, and form kidney stones. So in short, right, soybeans needs to be fermented. Yeah, and of course more than 90% of the soybean now is genetically modified. So again, we highly recommend, if you were to make anything with soybean, go for organic or biodynamic soybean. Yeah. And tempeh is really the new superfood now. The benefits of tempeh, right? This is actually from one of tempeh guru called Dr. Susanto. He together with two other friends actually came up with this book called Tempted by Tempeh, and they are now, he has a doctorate in nutrition, and they are now studying how to develop tempeh into some medicinal, for medicinal use. Yeah, like natto in Japan, right? Natto in Japan now is already classified as the research for medicinal use. And tempeh, why is it that helps have all these functions? Yeah, so it helps a lot of our basic functions in our body. But one of the things that is quite interesting is that it helps to combat anemia. Yeah, you look at the tempeh nutrients, right? Nutrition, the iron content is actually very high compared to even our other meat products. Yeah, so the protein is very good level as well. Okay, so how to make tempeh? I can't show you how to make tempeh, but basically just to show you, right, the process is very, very simple, can be easily learned. Yeah, lots of YouTube as well, how to make tempeh. Is basically just soaking it, dehulling it, and then steaming it, after that drying it, and then inoculate it with ragi, the starter, and then you pack it and then wait for it to ferment. So it's actually not such a complicated fermented food. Yeah, and lots of things that you can use your tempeh for. Yeah, making it into sauce, making it into you can eat it raw. There are lots and lots of things that you can do with tempeh. Yeah, so like I already mentioned earlier, right? Why do we choose organic and biodynamic ingredients, especially for home fermentation? Basically, then you can avoid all this unnecessary substance, yeah, in our daily life. Right. And most importantly to me is that, we can return the dignity to our plants. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the best ingredients for successful fermentation, in my experience, is really your intention and really, the passion as well that you want to, bring this to your family. And of course, the most important ingredients is actually time. Yeah. So ecoenzyme is another one. Compost, all these things that we can do for our household, right? So these are the things to healthy and happy life, right? So for me, is good food, rest, love what you do, socially conscious, support, our local and organic farmers. But to me, still ferment, right? We can actually ferment to a healthy microbiome and therefore a healthy life. Okay. Fermentation, so you are actually like raising your own pets. Yeah, so just give them a good environment and it can give you something that is really, really good. And in China, in Japan, you know, it's a common thing that they actually gives their daughter the fermented, you know, pots of base or starter as a heirloom for them to bring to their new family. Okay, so it is again, you know, it is our vision that, you know, every family should have a fermenter. And yeah, now is to wish you a joyful and inspiring fermentation journey. Yeah, so I'll hand it back to Dr. Wong.
Thank you, Kelly. I think we will spend a few minutes waiting for questions from the floor. So while waiting for questions from the floor, so maybe I have a few questions for you. How long can you keep some of this fermented food, like your sauerkraut and also kimchi? How long can you keep them in the fridge?
If you keep in the fridge, right, it can last for at least a few months. Yeah, and sauerkraut is actually quite interesting. If you ferment it and you keep it well in a airtight anaerobic environment, it can actually preserve for, you know, more than 6 months, even outside the fridge. So it's totally anaerobic, right? And the lactic acid is preserving that environment. So the vegetable stays, you know, it looks the same after 6 months.
Okay, another question I want to ask you is that in terms of salt, you mentioned that it should not be a chemical type of salt. And some of this sea salt, there's a lot of pollution and contamination in the sea. So this sea salt may not be as healthy as the normal salt that we think about. So what type of salt do you use?
Okay, actually the kind of salt that I use, right? I use whatever best that I can find. Yeah. So at the moment, I'm using mostly sea salt from any kind of natural sea salt. To me is is good enough. Like we cannot live in a vacuum, so whatever out there that we can find, but it's still better than chemicals that is added into the sea salt. Yeah. So look for natural sea salt that is not bleached, not whitened, and there's no anti-caking agent. Yeah, that is in it. That's the best alternative that we can have right now. But of course, you can also use like Celtic sea salt, which is supposedly the purer part of the world. Yeah. So, and I also hear that there are some sea salt from Indonesia that is like, you know, very unpolluted part of their islands. Yeah, whatever best that you can find.
Okay. I don't believe that all the natural salt is not polluted.
Yes.
For me, the salt that I use is a Himalayan salt.
Yeah.
So I think this salt that has been accumulated for millions of years, so it should be purer than all this sea salt.
Actually, it's a very, very good point, you know. Actually, you know, for me is that it's between having to break something, nature, to harvest this, than having something from the sea that is like in abundance. So it's kind of like the balancing act. But I know the Himalayan rock salt in terms of purity is definitely yeah, you cannot compare to sea salt. Yeah.
So I've been doing this fermentation for the last few months, and I made kimchi and also sauerkraut. And for me, I find that my gut is much better. I can form my stool are much better. It's a form stool.
Nice.
But when I first started, then I was very concerned that we may not do it properly and it can be poisonous. So you mentioned some of these points. Maybe you can tell us the key points that you can ferment it safely, and what are the signs of poison?
Yeah, actually, like I say, you know, what I noticed, right, that generally there's only 2 types of direction your food can go. One is fermented, the other one is become spoiled, right? So when it's fermented, then you can be rest assured because the lactic acid really strong. The lactic acid bacteria is really, really strong. It can keep away all this harmful bacteria. And what is the science of it is that it's really our senses, the smell, your sight, and the taste. If you accidentally taste it, right, if it's really putrefied, that you will spit it out. So to me, our senses is the best science.
Maybe I just summarize it. So when you say senses, the first one is sight.
Right.
So if you see that the food is moldy, green or blue or red color, that's poisonous. And just now you show the pictures, you said that is a calm yeast, KALM yeast.
Calm yeast is okay.
That is acceptable and is white in color. So you can have a safe yeast and also a poisonous yeast. The poisonous yeast is colorful. So just like in the jungle, you see anything colorful, it should be poisonous.
Yeah, or fluorescent kind of color.
And the 3 points that I learned from all the reading that I had from internet before I embark on it, the 3 points for safe fermentation is that you need to have a minimum of 2% salt.
Yeah.
So 2% salt. So you, in the past, I mean the traditional folks, they don't use weighing machine. So this person, the Katz, who recommend, I mean, who's the father of fermentation, he recommended that a minimum of 2% salt, up to 5%. So this is the first criteria. The second criteria, it must be anaerobic. Anaerobic, this for the lactobacillus
to grow
fermentation. The other types is not anaerobic. So anaerobic can be achieved by the special container that you mentioned, but that's too expensive. Sometimes you have to buy it from Shopee or Lazada. So the best anaerobic is the totally covered container. So I mean, most family will have this totally covered container, where you can close it without any oxygen.
Any kind of bottle. I just use any kind of glass bottle that I recycled from my food, right? And you just make sure that the cover is still not rusty or anything, right? But the cover can be easily bought online, or you can go to any packaging shop. But what is important is that when you make your sauerkraut or your lacto fermentation, is to take, normally I use the cabbage leaves, just press it down to make sure that the water actually covers, so it's totally submerged. That will be the anaerobic environment. That's most important.
Yeah, so if you have a bottle or container that is totally no oxygen, then this method is not so important. But if you don't have a bottle that you can be 100% anaerobic, then you must make sure that all your vegetables must be submerged in the water. So the water is the one that prevents the anaerobic.
Yes. So you can use a plate or a stone.
To put it, so you don't have, it can be aerobic, but all your vegetable must be below the water.
Water is the main.
So the first criteria is salt must be 2%. Second is anaerobic. The third one is the final outcome must be acidic. So some of them you want to test is that you use a pH and it must be less than 4.0.
Yeah.
So these are the 3 criteria to make sure that your whatever you ferment is
it has to be sour.
Is safe. But the issue that I also have is that this food is very salty. So the salt is it kills bad bacteria. But the problem is that if you eat too much, it can be very salty. So for me, my strategy is not to eat too much.
Yes.
And this fermented food like kimchi or sauerkraut actually change your taste bud. It creates some variety and also increase your umami and also senses. So I think it's a very good repertoire that you can have in your kitchen, and it helps.
Yeah. One of the things that I would recommend, right, is that you take a small bite before you eat your food, before your meal. It can actually, trigger the saliva excretion. Yeah. So you can just chew a small bite, and then you have your food. it's true. Normally I think generally people would not take more than 2 tablespoons per meal. Yeah, because it's actually more complementary to your main food.
Yep. Okay. Another thing that I also want to mention is that so it tastes salty and also tastes sour. So my wife has very bad reflux. So usually anything that is sour, she cannot take, and then it will trigger a bad gastroesophageal reflux. But
Yes.
for her, after she take the kimchi, even though it's sour,
Yes.
her reflux is better.
Yes.
So it shows that this microbiome is so powerful. And also want to mention is that the vegetables that you have, yes, a natural lactobacillus and all kinds of different good and bad bacteria. So initially, when you ferment it and you put it in an anaerobic environment, the other bacteria is also thriving, but because of lack of oxygen and also because of the salt, all these bad bacteria will die. So
Yes.
slowly they will die off, and then the lactobacillus, because they can overcome the salt and also lack of oxygen, so they will thrive. So after 12 hours, you can see bubbles bubbling up. When you do kimchi and sauerkraut, you can see, when you start seeing bubbles, that means you're on the right track.
Yes, correct. So in Chinese, in Chinese word, fermented veggie is called bubble veggie. So it's like bubbling. Callie Tai, it's like bubble. So I think it's quite interesting. Yeah, my mother-in-law was the same. She couldn't take anything sour at all because she had gastric, very, very chronic gastric for many, many years. And then when she took the kimchi that I made, right, she felt so good. And then she learned how to make it herself. So yeah, it is. I think through my own observation, I think there are a lot of goods in it, the microbiome.
Okay, nothing is that the tempeh. I saw your chart. It doesn't look so simple, There's many steps. I think the hands-on portion is quite a lot. So
Yes.
for me, I also do tempeh, and my method is much simplified. So the simplified ways is that I don't remove the skin. I don't dehull it because that part takes a long time. And also don't use banana leaf. I use the normal
Jar,
glass
container.
container, and then you can clean it easily, and just one whole piece, just put it in a glass container, and instead of putting it out, I put it in a oven. Oven means that it's not without the heat, so the oven can prevent all the insects from coming in. So my method is a shortcut, otherwise
Okay.
otherwise a lot of work to do it.
Actually, the method that we share, right, is a 2 steps fermentation. We have lactose fermentation first, the beans, and then we do the ragi fermentation. So it's a slow process, but I noticed that it's different because I've learned the express way as well. So it's different. So one day you can try. I send you a copy of our e-recipe.
Okay. Okay. One last point to mention is that when you do this kimchi and also sauerkraut fermentation, as we said, the lactobacillus will create a lot of acidic environment, so the pH will be less than 4.
Yeah.
So the container that you use cannot be made from metal. So it must be from glass. So no matter how good is your stainless steel, sometimes some of this iron will be leach out. Yeah.
Get the metal taste as well. The most of course the best one is ceramic or something, natural, earthen kind of ware, but glass is the next best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there's a question from the floor. Let me check. Just now is all from me. The question all from me. Sorry. Okay, this is from Dr. Tasran Surat. Few years ago, I accidentally came across the online article where some beer manufacturer produced kind of exotic beer using human vagina lactobacillus. What is the property of exotic beer which is fermented using human vagina lactobacillus? I don't think we are the expert in talking
No.
about it.
Yeah, we are wild fermenter.
Yeah.
Whatever that comes from, what is easily available. Yeah.
Okay,
And
so Dr. Tasron, you have to Google it yourself and tell us the answer. Okay.
become an expert.
So any last point that you want to tell our audience, Kelly?
To me is I just hope that there are more doctors like you, that you will.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a way of sharing, and also through your own observation. Yeah. So because you are a practitioner, so you are the best person to share this. And yeah, I think hopefully there are more doctors taking on this fermentation journey.
Oh, okay. I remember one last question I want to ask you. When you talk about this 2%, the 2% is based on the solid weight of your vegetables, right? But
Wait, if it's in a brine, it's the water.
The water plus a veggie? Or
no, I don't. I just use the water content. Yes, whatever water that you use, yes.
Oh, okay. So if it's a brine fermentation, you measure the water. Let's say it's 1 liter is 1 kilogram.
Yeah.
So you use about 20 gram of salt.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
1 liter to 20 gram of salt. That's right.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
it's sufficient. And also, if you are already fermenting, like you have your sauerkraut, your kimchi, right? It's always good to take some of your old sauerkraut, add into your new sauerkraut. Yeah, that helps the fermentation as well. So you can keep on, passing down this last batch of good bacteria.
Oh, just like when you ferment whiskey and VSOP, you use the extra old bacteria to do it.
I know, like sourdough, people do that as well. Sourdough starter, they keep
Yes.
on, adding on. Yeah. And another thing that I learned as well, that from someone in one of my friend, you can also use miso in replace. If you have a good miso, you can use that for your fermentation as well. So in replacement of, miso is very salty. Yeah. And also miso is that's life culture.
Yes.
So you can play around with that.
Yeah. One of the supplier of probiotic, he once told me, he said that his probiotic is so good that it can make sourdough. So he said he just use one of his capsule of his probiotic, and then you can ferment the bread to make a sourdough bread. So some of you here who wants to experiment, you can try that. To prove that the probiotic that you're taking is a live bacteria. Because if it's a dead bacteria, it could be 50 or 100 billion, but it's not working. But I think the cheapest way is to do our own sauerkraut and kimchi, because the bacteria is so good.
And not to forget, sauerkraut and kimchi, right, are both prebiotic and probiotic. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
so you have both. Yes.
Okay then. So I think with that, I want to thank Kelly for coming to our platform, and I think I've learned a lot from you, and hopefully our doctors who listen to the talk can start doing this at home, and you can do it safely with these 3 criteria. The salt must be 2%, and then it must be anaerobic, and the third one, it must be sour. The pH should be less than 4. If it's anything, all these 3 criteria are not there, then you may have a poisonous product that you are eating.
Yeah, which is quite difficult to fail, I would say.
Yes, it's quite a foolproof way, because it's the nature. I mean,
nature is there to provide. Yes.
Yes, the higher power has provided us with this natural thing, and
yes.
it's very difficult to fail, because I've done it first time and I was successful. So it should not.
Great.
Okay.
So encouraging.
Okay then. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. So we'll stop here. Thanks for joining us in our talk today.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, Kelly, you just stay on.